Namaste. I'm here today to answer some of the questions about the Great Invocation. Many of you know that the next month, in June, the full moon, it's on June 4th. It's known as the Great Invocation Day and also the Goodwill Festival. And on that day, it's very important for all of us to come together, set aside our differences, and chant the Great Invocation. Now, recently I've been posting a lot about the Great Invocation, and people have been asking me a lot of questions about it, and many of them are confused, like what is the right version, how should we chant. And I thought that perhaps it's time we create a course about it, but before we create the course, let me answer some of the basic questions. So I have these questions someone has asked me, and I'll be answering them shortly. The first question they ask is, I will not be naming that person, but I received these questions today morning. Okay. Number one, why is the word men used in the Great Invocation? It refers to humanity, but the common public is not able to connect with this reasoning and are questioning this word. Instead, they are asking to use every person, every being, human beings. Men sounds masculine to common people. Please let me know if I can replace the word men. Now the thing is, if you spread the Great Invocation to common people, or you go to a religious community like the Sikh community or the Muslim community, when you go to these communities, what happens is you are sharing it to people who are not on the esoteric path, right? There is a difference between people on the esoteric path, people who are disciples, people who are reading the Alice Bailey books, and people who do not. For these two categories, you have to have different Great Invocations. For the public who doesn't know anything about occultism, about esoteric science, for them an adapted version was produced, both by Lucis Trust and Master Choa. Now this adapted version, people saw it that these two people adapted it, and they saw it and they started doing all sorts of horrible things with the Great Invocation. That's where I come in, and that's where I say it is wrong. The thing is, you are not supposed to completely alter the Great Invocation so that it's no longer the Great Invocation itself. You can alter it for the public to a minute degree, to a certain degree, so that they accept it. But it only applies to the public, the general public, the religious community. It does not apply in any way, shape or form to the disciple. Okay? If you are a disciple, if you are studying the Alice Bailey books on a daily basis, if you have read Glamour, the World Problem, if you read books like this, you are supposed to be mature, you are supposed to understand what Alice Bailey says. Now, coming to the first question, that is, why do they use the word man? The word man comes from the Sanskrit word man. So the word man means mind. It refers to the mind. So it actually points towards the thinking entity, which is man or human being. It includes both men, women and children in it. And anyone who has read the books of Holy Master DK, they know that he is speaking of men, women and children, whole humanity. He's not speaking of man as it's understood in like modern day politically correct English. Okay, so as long as you can, try to follow the original version. Now of course, if you go to a public community, people who are very sensitive to these topics, then you can change the word and use the word humanity, no problem. But you are a disciple, you are not supposed to be politically correct. You are supposed to understand the inner teachings, not just the outer teachings. For you, if you are a disciple, you use the word man. Okay? And you know what it means. It means that the thinking entity who is a human being. That's what it's referring to. Number two, the third line of the second paragraph, let love descend on earth, is removed from the updated version. Please enlighten us with the reason behind it. To be honest, this is a wrong question. There was no verse called let love descend on earth in the Great Invocation. That's what I have been talking about every day. That is, you have been so misled, you don't even know what's the original version of the Great Invocation. See, you need to know about these things, okay? And someone who is creating an adapted version, they should mention it very explicitly, very clearly, that they have changed it, right? They have changed it. They cannot just change it like that, because you have to have the respect for the teachings. You have to have respect for Holy Master DK. You think he's like someone just who just created a verse? No, he had to put lot of attention to it. He had to really seriously put lot of effort, and he created something which is so beautiful. You cannot just spoil it by changing the lines. That is so disrespectful thing to do. So if you read the original Great Invocation, from the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth, right? That's the first paragraph. Then the second paragraph, from the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. That's the second paragraph. There's no sentence called let love descend on earth. Okay, so that is a wrong question. There's no such sentence. As much as you can, stick to the original version. Okay. Number 3, as I am from India, many people are not comfortable with using the word Christ in the Great Invocation. I don't know why Indians have this phobia for the word Christ, because if you are really religious, you will understand that Christ is a great avatar. But anyway, Torkom's teaching suggests not to change this word, and that the line is the most powerful line of the Great Invocation. And Master Choa modified it as world teacher or the great messenger of God. Now we as spiritual practitioners are confused which word to use. I use Christ, then people are not able to accept the invocation. Can we use the word world teacher? You know, the world teacher is Jiddu Krishnamurti. Do you want to invoke him during the Great Invocation? I'm speaking seriously. Okay, the world teacher is Jiddu Krishnamurti. That's what Theosophists believed in. So do you want to invoke him? So we are referring to the Lord Christ. Who is the Christ? The Christ is the anointed one. Who is the anointed one? Christ is a principle, and it's also, Christ used to be the highest initiate of the sun period. So now you will ask, what is the highest initiate of the sun? You have to read the book Rosicrucian Cosmoconception to understand these things. Okay, if you don't study, this book is recommended in the list of recommended authors of Master Choa Kok Sui. You read the book, you understand the teachings. It's very, very deep. It's very, very important you understand these things. Christ was the highest initiate of the sun. He descended on earth to make humanity evolve. He made a great sacrifice because he was in the sun, which is so much evolved compared to earth. He had to come down to earth and sacrifice himself in order to assist the evolution of humanity. So it's not an easy thing, okay? And now you change the word Christ with some world teacher who is someone else, or you use the word the coming one. Who is coming? So many avatars are coming, right? Do you think only Christ is coming? No. The spiritual hierarchy is sending new great messengers of God, new avatars. They are all coming. So who is coming? Be specific, right? So that is why you cannot use the word the coming one. Who is coming? Right? And you can't use the word world teacher because you are not speaking of Jiddu Krishnamurti, who is also a great teacher, and I love his teachings, right? So you cannot use the names of other teachers. You are specifically invoking the Christ. You know why? You read the book, The Rays and the Initiations, you will see Holy Master DK says, you have to meditate on these 3 particular verses from the Great Invocation. And one of that verse is, may Christ return to earth. Okay? And another verse is, may it seal the door where evil dwells. He said these 2 verses are one of the most important in the Great Invocation. And you are the one who is removing the very important verse, the most important verse from the invocation. See, that is why I'm so against it. I'm not against because I'm against, let's say, some people believe I'm against GMCKS. I'm not. I love his teachings. I practice his teachings. He taught what? He says, practice discernment, right? Do not believe something to be true because I said it. That's what Master Choa Kok Sui says, right? And I believe I practice his teachings because I don't believe him blindly. I apply my brain, I study the recommended books. After studying recommended books, I cross-check them. For example, if I read Alice Bailey book, I just don't read Alice Bailey book. I read Alice Bailey book and then I cross-check it with the teachings of Rudolf Steiner. Once I read Rudolf Steiner, I cross-check it with another teacher. So it's all interconnected. Okay? Then I cross-check it with Master Choa's teachings also. So I study teachings in this manner. I don't just blindly follow. And I don't have this blind devotion towards any guru that I will just blindly agree with whatever they say. Right? So that answers this question. Now, another question we have, why is the line, let goodwill and the will to do good descend on earth, removed from the invocation? Is it okay we say it is mandatory to remove it? There is no such verse in the Great Invocation, right? The second verse I said, from the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth, right? Then after that, from the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the holy masters know and serve, right? So, the fifth question, can we teach the triangle's work to everyone, or is there any precaution that we have to look after before sharing it with others? You are not supposed to share the triangles with just anybody, right? Triangles is for people who specifically want to do the Great Invocation together every day. Triangles are like a vortex of energy. You and two other friends create triangle, and you want to serve the planet Earth by doing the Great Invocation on a specific hour every single day. You all together do it by creating a triangle. So you cannot just ask a random stranger to do the triangle. So if they're on the spiritual path, if they have started reading the books, then you introduce the triangles to them. You are not supposed to introduce the triangles to a nobody, right? They have to understand that this is the Great Invocation, this is what it means. Then you share the Great Invocation booklet with them. The booklet, for example, we have a booklet from the works of Torkom Sharadarian. You know why Torkom wrote a whole book on the Great Invocation? It's called The Triangles of Fire. If you read that book, you'll learn a lot about the Great Invocation. So why don't you study that book? Once you understand it completely, then you teach others. Because when you don't know yourself, you are misleading other people, right? That's that question. It would be great help if we get answers to this question. So these were his questions, okay? These were his questions about the Great Invocation. So I hope you understand. You are not supposed to modify the Great Invocation unless it's absolutely necessary, and even if it's absolutely necessary, you only modify certain parts, like you change men into humanity, fine, but don't do major changes, like you remove the whole word Christ, then it's no longer the Great Invocation. Why is it called the Great Invocation? You are invoking the Christ, right? So if you are not invoking the Christ, it's not Great Invocation, it's something else. It's invocation of Krishnamurti or some other avatar, right? So you're not supposed to do that. You have to understand the teachings, right? And you have to also understand another thing. This is the third stanza of the Great Invocation. You think this is the Great Invocation, it is not. Holy Master DK gave two other stanzas of the Great Invocation. So if you want to do the complete Great Invocation, you have to start from the very first stanza. Have you read it? No. So if you have any religious boundaries, if you have problems, you have to understand all religious teachings are one. Ultimately, they are branches of the same tree. Stop with this hatred, stop with this separatism, Hindu versus Muslim, Muslim versus Christian. That is not going to solve the problems of humanity. Now you will say that I am a Hindu, I have a problem with invoking the word Christ. When you have such problem, you are in conflict with people who are Christians, right? If you are a Muslim who has a problem with the word Christ, you are also in conflict with a certain religious community. And then you do Great Invocation and you say, may love descend, right? How can love descend when you are so separative? When you have so much separatist tendencies within your heart, how can love descend on earth, right? So the great invocation itself has no meaning when your heart is so small, it's so tiny, it's so narrow. So you have to change yourself. Don't chant mantras like the great invocation if you do not really mean it, right? If you do not really mean that love should come on earth and everyone, we should see each other as brothers and sisters, there's no religious division, there's no political division. If you want such an earth, only then you chant the great invocation. If you don't really mean it from your heart, why are you doing it, right? It's same with you support, for example, right? A man who is making people more ignorant by doing something bad with the education system, do you think that person can chant, let light descend on earth? They can't, right? You have to mean what you say. You can say certain prayers, but if you don't mean them, they have no meaning, right? So if you really mean that let light descend on earth, may the Christ return to earth, and may the spirit of love come to our hearts, if you really mean it, then only you do the great invocation, right? It's very, very simple. And what do we mean by the word may Christ return to earth? The Christ must first return to your heart. Your heart, that's where you have the love center. If you cannot love other people, what's the point of Christ returning to earth, right? So you have to have that love within you for you to realize that the Christ has come. So stop fighting over words, You have to understand that words are pointing at something. Don't be stuck with the word, right? So you have to understand these things. You have to have great respect for these teachers. If you see that Master Choa, I have a recording of him chanting the original Great Invocation. So he didn't really distort the Great Invocation. When he led the retreats, he chanted the original Great Invocation. And I have the recording of it. And I practice that invocation. Why? Because I am a disciple. I do not follow these religious divisions. I do not follow a way which is so divisive. I have no problem with the word Christ. I have no problem with the word Allah. I have no problem with the word Shiva. I have no problem with the word Krishna. I have no problem with any religion. And that is why, in that spirit, I practice the great invocation every day. Thank you all for joining. Namaste. Goodbye.